We're going to go ahead and get the meeting called to order. Mr. Kimball, if you would call the roll.
Certainly, sir. Let's see. Mr. Ankuma?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Castillo?
Here.
Ms. Gill?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Here.
Mr. Reidinger?
Here.
Ms. Ward is not here. And Mr. Webb?
Here.
Great. Thank you.
All right. We'll stand for the pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our first public hearing for the budget. And with that, in accordance with 2.1, public comment. Okay, excuse me. Just was getting one. If I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda for this evening.
So if I might say this, we are going to, or I would like to propose that the addenda be adopted with the small exception that the recognition of IBE division status move before the public comment, and then we do the public comment and proceed with the rest of the agenda, given the presence of so many people here for that. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, actually, I've got a question.
Yes.
For questions and feedback 4.01, that is something new that is not provided for in our bylaws. So I think we should take that off today and talk about how we're going to do it, since this was, well, pointed out to us 20 minutes ago.
Any other comment before we, about that? Mr. Render?
First off, let me apologize for getting the word out to everyone so late. You are quite right, Mr. Lawrence, that the word should have gone to people before. The subject came up when we were talking about the agenda last week, and I simply failed to send out a note to everyone, and you have my apologies for that. The idea was essentially to, in order to get the public more of a chance to participate in the public comment section, if you will, and because this is a public hearing, to have a second section of what amounts to public comment after the presentations had been given, so that the public could ask any questions or make any comments, also time limited. There's nothing in the bylaws that prohibits it, and Tricia was present, that is the general counsel was present at the meeting where this was discussed and felt it was consistent with the school board policies. That said, I'll follow what the will of the chair and the board is in terms of whether we wish to afford the public an opportunity to comment after the presentations tonight or discuss it first.
Now, my only point is this just for tonight, or is this a change going forward? I mean, when we talked about how to better respond to the public, you know, we sat here and we had a work session about how to do it and how to do it consistently. So my question is, as the board, well, it's not a question, the board hasn't even discussed this. So I think we should remove it and figure out what we want to do with it, rather than do it and then maybe have to yank it back and look like we're not really thinking things out.
In the end, are there any other comment about this before I make any comments about this? Okay. Ms. Lawrence, and I, with Mr. Ranger, would apologize for not necessarily bringing this to the full board's attention. It is not something that is going to be an occurrence or change for the duration. It was an opportunity for the public to give additional comment only during the budget cycle, where we are presenting our different aspects of the budget. With the public listening to those comments and then having an opportunity to ask questions or clarification points after the presentation, where a member of staff or myself or Mr. Ranger would be respond to them. But also, if we do not have a answer at that moment, we would refer to staff, and with them given in a timely manner, responding back to the public with that clarification or additional information that they may have been asked for with that particular aspect of the budget that we're discussing. I'm okay with pulling this back for tonight and having a conversation about it. But I do think it's a good opportunity for us to engage the public a little bit more within the budget process to make sure that we're hearing them, responding back to them in a timely manner. But I'm
think
fine with
the
that.
responding idea is good. We just need to make sure we're not blurring the distinction between a public meeting and a public forum, and they're two very different things, and the public role is very different in both. So, yeah, if we could just have a discussion as the right way to go forward, and if the idea is limited just to our budget meetings, that could be one way to go forward, but I just think we need to make sure that it's thought out and not tossed on and just hoped for the best.
And we will do that. So if someone would amend the agenda for this evening for that one, and we will, Dr. Schiller, add that for a conversation for our brief conversation for our next board meeting.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Unanimous consent.
And I'm just going to say, if there's nothing else, I'll ask unanimous consent for the amended agenda to be accepted.
Just one clarifying thought, Mr. Chair, and that is, as we have public hearings and work sessions, if we could come up with some conceptual framework for what a public hearing is and what a work session is, I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, we will discuss that as well. I'll ask unanimous consent for approval of the amended agenda. All right, thank you very much. No objection. All right, move on to 2.01. In accordance with school board
Recognition of IB agenda.
Did we move that to public comment?
Yes.
Okay, it didn't move on here. All right. All right, we're going to go with moving up to the recognition of the IB division. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sebring.
Yes. Ms. Seabridge, please.
All right. Thank you so much for having us here tonight to celebrate the accomplishment with the International Baccalaureate at Falls Church City Public Schools. The IB coordinators from all of the programs are here with me, and they will be presenting on information from their schools to share with you. And I just want to say that we're excited that finally we are now authorized as a middle years program, grades 6 through 10. We've been working on this for 3 years. Our teachers have worked very hard in getting everything in place with our curriculum, with working with pedagogy, and making sure that our kids are getting what they need with their education. We are one of the newest members of the global community, offering the International Baccalaureate Middle Years program in 147 different countries. We are also the first public K-12 IB World School Division in Virginia, and we owe that in many thanks to our IB World educators for all of their hard work in making this a reality at all of our schools. They worked very hard with the PYP program, the diploma program, and also with the middle years program. We're celebrating also 35 years of excellence and expanding opportunities. The IB vision began in 1981, and this year we sealed that gap in the middle with the middle years program with our authorization. We owe a lot of this to this man, Mr. Olam, who is with us here tonight. So for those of you that aren't aware of this, Mr. Olam was on the school board. And when he was on the school board, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was on a committee that wanted to bring the International Baccalaureate to Falls Church City. And he recommended this to the superintendent at the time. And then afterwards, it just became history. So George Mason has been a diploma program school since 1981, 35 years. So thank you so much, Mr. Olam.
We're going to do it as well, yeah.
Can I have a say and then I'll shut up for the rest?
Yes, you certainly can.
Mr. Olam, you can always have a say.
centennial away, I was one of you, but that was a long time ago. And however, I have been one of your great supporters, although I don't come to meetings. I do it better in another circus where people are wanting to say, do we knock them off this year, or do we raise them up this year, or who is going to decide what happens? I have learned in other areas that when an item is introduced into use, and that item goes and gets very, very good, and then suddenly drops begin to take place. And when that begins to happen, it shows a weakness in the extent to which the people who are around to see what is good and what is more than good. It is excellent. And if you haven't seen this yet, about a year ago, there was a large, good-sized piece of paper from the Senate and from the House of Representatives of the state of Virginia. And if you ever wanted to be congratulated, look at that piece of paper. It's not a piece, it's about like that. And it's located along with the other things that the George Mason School people allowed to happen. You'll see what these people, nobody went to them. Anyway, I would try to find out who went to them to tell them what a great thing this was. Somehow or another, they knew. And what a great thing to come at your doorstep on July 4th. And there it was, and I picked it up. I couldn't believe it. Well, it just shows you that there were many other schools that picked up what we did here, and we gave them all the cooperation that they could possibly use. And this is reflective in the kind of message that you will read, and I hope you read it. It's a great thing, and I'm very happy to be here to resound that. It's a great thing to see something that you're involved in when you're little, and you suddenly become pretty big. And I hope you continue to be so, continue to be successful, and remain to be the person that people from other parts of the state have recognized. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say this, and I hope you keep them well funded as the years go by. Thank you.
Thank you.
And before you potentially take off, Mr. Olam, we here in the Falls Church City Schools would like to take a moment to recognize you for your leadership in the IB program and give you a little token of our appreciation. And I'll read this. Congratulations, Exceptional Performance Award presented to Lou Olam for outstanding dedication and contributions toward Falls Church City's public schools becoming a K-12 International Baccalaureate World School Division. And I'll come over and present this to you.
We're glad you came here too.
Lou, look at me.
Mr. O.
Makes your heart feel good. It really does.
Thank you, Mr. Olam. Who would have thought 35 years later where we would become because of you. So thank you. Okay, so one of the...
That's what happens at 35.
Aw. Hey, you're still young. You're still young. So...
You were only 65 then.
Yeah, that's right. You're just a little one. So one of the big questions is always, why IB? And I think Mr. Olam talked about that a little bit. But one of the things that really kind of resonates with us is that IB is not just a logo. It's the way we do business. It encompasses so many different things. It's our curriculum. It's our collaboration. It's our assessment. It's our pedagogy and instruction. It's the way our kids think. And we want them to think deeper, at a deeper level. It's not about memorization, regurgitation of material, just because they know to pick A on that test instead of B. It's much more than that. It's also about being global citizens and really being caring, and that whole learner profile part that we want all of our young people to grow up with those kinds of attributes and characteristics. So it is that common language. The other thing, it unites us throughout the different programs, whereas before we didn't have that, especially in the middle school area. We had the PYP speaking the language, we had the DP speaking the language, but the middle school is like speaking traditional, and really there was no connection. Now we have that connection. So when those kids come to us from the PYP program, they're going to get that consistency. They're going to know what's expected of them, and they're going to be prepared for that, and they're going to be ready for that. And then they're going to be ready for that diploma program if they choose to go that route. It helps us also with those challenging questions. It's about that deeper thinking and thinking critically. It's about those research skills, those soft skills, those 21st century ones that we really need to have for our children, so that when they grow up, they're going to do well in higher education, but just in the workplace. So what's after higher education? They got to go to work. So there's so much more to it than really just a logo. Here are some things, and I'm not going to read this all to you. You guys can read, and everybody will have the presentation, so you can go through this. But these are some of the main things, and notice it's not just about the teaching or the learning. It's for both. It's for the adults, and it's for the students. Our staff and our teachers have grown so much through this process. And you'll see a little bit later that they have written some comments for you to read. So it's inquiry-based, not just for our kids, but it's also for our staff. It's concept-driven. Contextualized. It's rooted in the real world, so the kids can make those connections. It's collaborative, not just the collaboration with our children collaborating together, but with our staff. I've been here for 13 years, and there's times when our staff, they were not collaborating. It's like because there was no framework for them to do so. They teach in their classroom, they do their thing, and they try to reinvent the wheel over and over again. But now they have other people that come together, and they're working together, they're working smarter by collaborating. It's differentiated, not only for staff, but for our children as well, because we know our children come to us with different needs, and we try to support those needs. And it's also informed by assessment. Assessment isn't a gotcha. It's not a, we'll take the test, he got 5 of them wrong, so I guess he failed. It's more about mastery. It's like, okay, he doesn't know these 5 questions, so we need to teach him so that that child masters that content. That's the goal of education, is mastery. The other piece of this that I think we need to talk about, and we haven't really addressed this with the board much, but with the VDOE, Dr. Staples has been a lot of discussion around the profile of a graduate. We were looking a little deeper at the profile of a graduate, and what we were noticing is the correlation between IB and the profile of a graduate that we must do in the state of Virginia in each school division, and how all of those things are tied together. So if you look at the bolded items, the bold items, those are the things from the profile of a graduate, and then underneath is the way the IB is connected. Not everything, but just some ideas of how that connection is made for our students. And that's my overview. So now I'm going to turn it over to the coordinator, since I've talked plenty enough. And we're going to start with Jeremy Ferrara, and he is our assistant principal at Mount Daniel and also our PYP coordinator.
Thank you for having us. So at Mount Daniel, one of the things that we are trying to build is build these skills at a young age and build the vocabulary. So we want the students to have a collaborative learning community where they're working together and able to communicate and collaborate with each other. We want the learning to be student-centered and inquiry-based, again, starting at a very young age when you're still learning their letters and learning basic math concepts that they're exploring, not just being told the concepts. And then we also want them looking at things from a more global lens, so they're not looking at things from a narrow local viewpoint, but seeing things globally. So one of the examples here I have up there is, I'm going to read a few of the quotes of just short blurbs from what we have from what the teacher sent you. From Nan Hoff, one of our kindergarten teachers, described PYP by 5- and 6-year-olds are naturally curious about the world around them. Inquiry-based teaching and learning creates opportunities for our kindergarten students to wonder about and explore their environment in a meaningful and purposeful way. So a great example is this is our kindergartners take a trip to Mexico, where they actually pretend to get on a flight, and that's them getting on their flight to Mexico. They have boarding passes and everything, and they go to a Mexican market and they explore the market from a different points of view, and it's learning about it as part of their unit, how we express ourselves. So it's a great provocation and opening to the unit and their inquiry into different ways, and again, looking at it from a global perspective, not just looking at it from a local perspective. The second picture up there is Kelly Marple, one of our first grade teachers, describes PYP as an IB school. Students take responsibility for their own learning. They want to work hard, research, and find out about their burning questions, and this structure not only allows them to do so, but encourages it. So first graders start one of their units with no talking day, which is their provocation, where they spend the entire day without being able to speak at all. So they have to think of other ways to communicate. Then they spend the entire unit learning about communication in a global lens, and at the end of the unit, they make videos where they are teaching different communication symbols, and they make up communication symbols that mean different things, and they kind of compare them with different classes, and they try to guess what they've come up with. Also talking about people outside just our kindergarten and first grade, Carolyn Sweterlich, our music teacher, describes PYP as a teacher. PYP gives me the tools needed to implement a constructivist approach and continue growing in my practice. The picture up there on the left is students making instruments out of recycled materials. So this is part of the unit Sharing the Planet. So they're making different musical instruments that fit the music teacher's Virginia standards, but they're doing it using recycled materials. And the last picture on the right there is something new this year. Is we wanted to try to, one of our goals from our visit last year, our evaluation, was to make PYP part of the entire school, not just certain areas of the curriculum. So we wanted to include it into PBIS, which is our behavior intervention program, and the students receive hippo hoorays when they do something where they do something good, around the school, something kind, and they have to one of those different learning traits are checked off as they do it. And we've seen such an incredible, we've only been doing this now for 4 or 5 months, and we've seen such an incredible improvement in the students' understanding of those vocabulary words, which is really the basis as they get older and move through the entire IB program. So it's just, again, trying to make it part of the entire school, not just certain areas of the curriculum. So PYP gives the students a great framework for IB as they begin their journey, moving up through the system, and it's amazing that we're able to have it from K all the way up through 12.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Michelle Harcharik. I am the PYP coordinator and assistant principal at Thomas Jefferson Elementary. I kind of want to speak to you guys from the heart tonight, and you can read what PYP is. You can read when we became a PYP school. I will say the second statement there because that's really our mission statement, and basically, PYP is, it does allow students to become lifelong learners who strive to make the world a better, more peaceful place. Thinking back, I started in Falls Church 7 years ago as a reading specialist at Thomas Jefferson, and that was my first introduction to PYP. I then went to the middle school where we didn't have MYP at the time, and then I came back 3 years ago as an assistant principal at TJ. And I have to say, I'm gonna, I take a lot of things from all my different positions and my time here, but I think the one thing that I am the most appreciative at this point is the introduction to the PYP, because I don't think that I would have necessarily come across it in my 17 years of teaching. I hadn't come across it yet. So to me, being introduced to that and seeing the potential that it has and what it offers to our students and our teachers, that's just so powerful to me, and it's just something that I'm so happy to be a part of, and I'm so grateful that I got this experience to be introduced to it. And it really is about creating those learners who work to make the world a better, more peaceful place, and that's just, in a nutshell, that's what it is. And it's just very powerful, and I've seen a lot of evolution through the years. There are people who aren't always extremely fond of it, but I really think that has to do with understanding it. PYP is so complex. It's a huge continuum. Actually, IB is a huge continuum that is very murky in a lot of ways, and until you get into it, until you use it, until you talk about it and collaborate, it's something that can be very difficult to understand. It's a framework. I know a lot of people think that it is a program. It is a framework, and it is a framework that I feel that just really is what I think every educator wants and every parent would want for their children. So that's why it's just very, again, something that I'm so grateful to be a part of. We have quotes that we will share with you from the teachers. I'm not going to read all of those, but there are a couple things, some pictures that we have here of students around school. We've really, like I said, we've been evolving. Probably one of the biggest evolution or changes that I've seen is the teachers. And as we brought 5th grade in, they were a little bit behind the other grade levels because they were at the middle school for a while. But really seeing their change, their changing mindset and understanding what it means to teach through this framework. And it's really about the bigger picture. And it's going beyond our standards that we have and, getting beyond just the specific content of that particular person in social studies that a child in Virginia needs to know, and really thinking about that global piece and how it connects to everything else, because they may not live in Virginia for the rest of their lives, or, and just helping them to kind of move beyond and just connect everything. And that's really what I see is the teachers being able to connect those big themes of who we are, how we organize ourselves, how the world works. And that's what's really, I think, is so powerful. Just some more pictures, really trying to bring in that international piece. But it's not about international, just being at the top level. And there's recently I've seen a analogy of an iceberg, and lots of times we think of the top level of the iceberg when it comes to culture and thinking about just the different foods and the different clothing and things like that. But there's really so much more to culture, and that's really what we're trying to promote with our students. We're really working on promoting international mindedness this year. We're asking students to kind of see what else is going on in the world and talk about that. We've also implemented a couple things this year. We've always talked about the learner profile traits, but we're really trying to recognize students this year for that, and we've had such a positive response from parents and students in being recognized. And the interesting, the fun thing about it is that the students select their classmate that they feel is a communicator, or they select the student that they feel is most principled, and they can select more than one, so it's not limiting. But I think that's had a really good response. Are there any more pictures? And this is just some of, some pictures of the students really, thinking about, it's thinking about their work and thinking about what they're doing and how they can connect everything together. So I know lots of times at the beginning of the year, there is a lot of language involved with PYP, and that can kind of trip people up sometimes, but it's just showing the students, how can they connect that to their lessons, and it really connects to their everyday. They can be reflective every time they do something. It's about their creativity. So again, I think it's something that I am truly grateful for having experienced and being a part of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Laura Lane.
Good evening. How are you? Good. I am, as Jeremy and Michelle were talking, my neurons were firing in my brain because I kept thinking of all these different things that I could say and make connections to. But I'm going to limit myself because sometimes when I talk about IB, I get really excited and I talk forever and ever and ever. And I don't want to do that to you tonight because I know you have a robust agenda. So I'm so excited to be here in Falls Church City. I joined the staff at MEH and GM this August, I guess, so it's been about 5 months. And my previous experience in other school districts, I came from other IB schools and personalized learning schools, so I have the background in both types of frameworks that we are implementing at the schools. And it has just been super wonderful to join a dedicated staff of teachers that really want to grow their practice and do what's best for students in the classroom every single day. I sort of hit the ground running because I came and we had the verification visit in November, and that is a huge thing. And my previous school, just for comparison, I was at the school for full school years prior to having that big meeting. And so I got to know the staff. I had the opportunity to work with all the administrators, provide all the professional development myself so that I knew exactly how that meeting was going to go. And here, I sort of stepped into it blindly, and the staff was so gracious and just inviting me to their classrooms to see what they're doing because they were so excited about the progress that they had made.